Hello, my name is Miles. I'm 22, and I've been working as a night security guard in this downtown Sacramento high rise for about 3 weeks now. It's not the kind of job I pictured when I was a kid, dreaming about what I'd do after high school, but it pays the rent on my tiny studio apartment and leaves my days free for the online classes I'm taking in electrical engineering. I'm the youngest guy on the team, so I get stuck with the overnight shifts most of the time. The veterans call it paying your dues. I call it quiet. The building is one of those sleek glass towers full of tech startups, law firms, and creative agencies. By 8 p.m., it's usually a ghost town. Just the hum of the HVAC system, the occasional ding of the elevator, and the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like they're as tired as I am. I like the solitude, though. Gives me time to think with my podcasts or just walk the floors without anyone bothering me. That night in early November was colder than usual, the kind of chill that sneaks through the vents and makes you wish you'd brought a thicker jacket. I was doing my rounds clipboard in hand, checking doors, and making sure no one had left a computer screens on or coffee pots brewing. Everything was routine until I hit the 14th floor. The lights in the main conference room were still on. That's unusual, most people are gone by 7, and the cleaning crew doesn't start until 10. I figured someone forgot to flip the switch. I walked down the hallway, my shoes squeaking softly on the polished floor, and approached the frosted glass door. Through the blur, I could make out a silhouette. Someone was still in there. I knocked lightly. "Excuse me, building security, just checking if everything's okay in there." No answer at first. Then a voice, low and steady, but with an edge I couldn't quite place. "Come in." I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room smelled faintly of dry erase markers and stale coffee. The long table was empty except for a single woman sitting at the far end, her back to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city lights twinkling below. She had long, dark hair that fell in loose waves, a bit messy, like she'd been running her hands through it. She wore a thin white blouse, sleeves rolled up, and she was staring at the tabletop as if it held all the answers to questions she didn't want to ask. I cleared my throat. "Sorry to bother you, ma'am. I thought everyone had headed out. I can come back later if—" She turned then, and I got a good look at her face. Mid-40s maybe, with sharp features that looked like they'd been carved for boardroom battles. Her eyes were red-rimmed like she'd been crying or hadn't slept in days, but there was still this unbreakable poise about her. I'd seen her around the building before, always striding through the lobby with a coffee in one hand and a tablet in the other, people parting for her like she owned the place. Amara Voss, creative director for one of the big agencies on the upper floors. Everyone knew her name. She was the one who landed the huge accounts, the kind of woman who could make or break careers with a single email. She looked at me for a long moment, then said quietly, "Close the door, please. I don't want anyone seeing me like this." I hesitated, but something in her voice made me do it. The click of the door shutting felt louder than it should have. The room suddenly seemed smaller, more intimate. I stood there awkwardly, not sure if I should leave or say something. Security protocol says I'm supposed to report unauthorized after-hours access, but this didn't feel like that. She let out a slow breath. "I just got fired." The words came out flat, like she'd practiced saying them in the mirror 100 times. After 19 years. Because I wouldn't sign off on a contract that would have screwed over half our clients. They called it insubordination. I called it having a spine. I didn't know what to say. I'd heard whispers in the break room about office drama upstairs, but nothing like this. 19 years. That's longer than I'd been alive. I shifted my weight, glancing at the door, then back at her. Part of me knew I should radio it in or at least make an excuse to leave. But she looked so alone. Not weak, never weak, but like someone who'd been carrying the world and finally felt it slip. I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down without thinking. "That sucks. I'm sorry." She let out a bitter laugh, more breath than sound. "Sorry, right. Everyone's sorry until they forget by tomorrow." She rubbed her temples. "You know what the worst part is? I built that place. The campaigns, the team, the reputation, it was all me. And now, nothing." We sat in silence for a minute. The city lights flickered outside, casting shifting shadows across her face. I could have left then. Should have. But I didn't. Instead, I said the only thing that came to mind: some nights all people need is someone who doesn't walk away, even if they can't fix anything. She looked up at me, then really looked like she was seeing me for the first time. Not the uniform or the badge or the kid half her age, just me. Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, small and broken and real. A laugh escaped her soft and choked. "You're a strange one, security guy." "Miles," I said. "Name's Miles." "Amara." She extended a hand across the table and I shook it. Her grip was firm, but her fingers were cold. I stayed for another hour that night. We didn't talk much more, just sat there while she stared out the window or flipped through an old notebook full of sketches. When I finally stood to leave, she didn't ask me to stay, but she didn't tell me to go either. As I walked out and closed the door behind me, that room felt different, like something had shifted in the air. I didn't know it then, but that closed door had just cracked open a little for both of us. And whatever was on the other side, I wasn't ready to walk away from it yet. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Amara. The way her voice cracked just a little when she said she'd been fired, the way she tried to hold it together like it was just another meeting gone wrong. I replayed it all during my shifts, walking the empty halls with my flashlight beam cutting through the dark. Part of me knew I should let it go. She was way out of my league. Some high-powered executive with a corner office and a life I couldn't even imagine. But another part, the part that kept pulling me back to the elevator button for the 14th floor, wouldn't shut up. The next few nights, I found excuses to linger on her floor longer than necessary. The building's security cameras would show it if anyone checked, but no one ever did. I'd pass by the conference room, peek through the frosted glass, and there she'd be packing boxes, sorting through files, or just sitting there staring at nothing. The lights stayed on later and later. She wasn't rushing to leave. On the fourth night, I stopped at a little coffee stand in the lobby before my shift and picked up a ginger tea. I'd overheard her once months ago complaining to a colleague about how it settled her stomach during late-night deadlines. I scribbled a note on a napkin, not much, but maybe the warmth helps a little. Miles. I left the cup outside the door with the note tucked under it, then kept walking like I hadn't done anything. The morning after, during my handover with the day shift guy, I swung by the 14th floor one last time before clocking out. The cup was gone. The napkin, too. I didn't know if that meant anything, but my heart beat a little faster anyway. A couple of nights later, it happened again. I left another tea this time with a simple, "Still here if you need an ear." Cheesy, yeah, but it was all I had. When I passed by later that evening, the door was cracked open just enough. I hesitated, then pushed it wider. She was at the table boxes stacked around her like walls, wearing a simple black sweater and jeans hair tied back loosely. She looked up as I stepped in, and there was no surprise in her eyes. Just something softer. "You don't have to keep doing this," she said, but she was holding the napkin from the night before folded neatly in her hand. "I know," I replied, shrugging, but the tea was going to waste otherwise. She smiled, then a real one this time, small but genuine. "Come in, close the door if you want. Or don't. I don't care anymore." I closed it and sat across from her again like that first night. We didn't talk about the firing at first. Instead, she asked about my shifts, why a guy my age was walking around an empty building at 3 a.m. I told her about the online classes, how I wanted to design lighting systems someday. Stuff that actually made buildings feel alive, not just lit up. She listened, really listened, nodding like it wasn't the dumb dream of some kid. Then she started opening up. Not all at once, but in pieces. How she'd started at the agency right out of college, climbing the ladder one campaign at a time. The big wins, the awards on her wall that now felt like relics. And the marriage that had crumbled under the weight of all those late nights, the husband who said he supported her ambition until he didn't. "I forgot what I even liked anymore," she said quietly, tracing a finger over an old sketchbook she'd pulled from a box. "It was all meetings and deadlines, and pretending I had it together. He left because I was never home. Or maybe because I was always home in my head, somewhere else." I leaned forward. "You can remember. It just takes someone reminding you every day." She looked at me sharply like she was searching for the punchline or pity, but I meant it. Completely. "Why do you care, Miles? You're what, barely old enough to drink legally?" 22, I said. "And I don't know, maybe because I've seen a lot of people in this building pretend they're fine when they're not. You're the first one who admitted it out loud." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "You're dangerous, you know that, eh? Dangerous how The kind that makes people believe things could be different. We talked until the sky outside started lightening the city, waking up below us. She showed me some of her old sketches, bold designs for ad campaigns, but also personal stuff like lighting concepts for theaters and galleries. Beautiful, intricate work that made me see her differently. Not just the tough boss lady, but someone who created things that made the world brighter. Before I left that morning, she said, "Bring 2 teas next time, if you're going to keep showing up." I did. Every night after that. 2 ginger teas, one for each of us. We'd sit in that conference room, turned temporary hideout, packing her things by day, unpacking her past by night. She told me about the studio she always wanted to open her own place. No corporate bullshit, just pure creativity. How it got buried under years of compromise. One night she pulled out that old sketch again, the one of a custom lighting fixture, all curves and shadows playing off each other. "This was mine," she said, before everything else took over. "It's incredible," I told her. "You should finish it." She looked at me for a long moment. "Maybe I will, if you keep bringing the tea." I grinned. Deal. Those meetings weren't accidents anymore. They were something we both waited for. I'd finish my rounds faster, saving the 14th floor for last. She'd stay later, leaving the door unlocked. And every time I walked in with those 2 cups, it felt like we were building something small but solid in a world that had tried to tear her down. I didn't know where it was going, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just going through the motions. I was showing up. And so was she. About a month into those late-night tea sessions, things started feeling different. Not dramatic or anything, just this quiet shift, like the air in the conference room had gotten thicker, charged with something neither of us was naming yet. We'd talk about everything and nothing. Her old campaigns, my crappy attempts at circuit designs for class, the way the city looked from the windows at 4 a.m. when the first delivery truck started rumbling below. She'd tease me about being too young to remember cassette tapes, and I'd fire back about how she probably still used a flip phone. It was easy, too easy. One evening as I was finishing my rounds, my phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from an unknown number. "Rooftop. Bring a jacket. It's cold up here." My heart did this stupid flip. The rooftop access was technically off limits for non-maintenance, but I'd snuck up there before on slow nights. I grabbed 2 beers from the vending machine in the lobby, fancy IPAs I'd been saving for a day off, and headed up. She was already there, leaning against the ledge, the wind whipping her hair around her face. Sacramento spread out below us, a grid of lights stretching to the horizon. The Sacramento River, a dark ribbon cutting through it all. She had on a leather jacket over her ex-husband left behind, she said, and jeans that hugged her legs just right. 2 folding chairs were set up. She'd planned this. "No tea tonight?" she asked as I handed her a beer. "Figured we'd upgrade." She clinked her can against mine. "Too unexpected company." We drank in silence for a bit, watching the traffic crawl on the highways far below. It was one of those clear fall nights where you could see stars fighting through the city glow. She was quieter than usual, fidgeting with the tab on her can. Finally, she turned to me, eyes catching the rooftop lights. "If I said I miss you when I don't see you in the hallway, would that scare you?" The question hung there, raw and real. I set my beer down, stepping closer so the wind didn't steal my words. "No, but it would scare me if you thought this was just some passing thing. Some pity for the security guy feels for the fired exec." She laughed, but it was nervous, her hand tightening on the railing. "Miles, I'm 42, you're 22. That's not a gap, that's a canyon." I shook my head, closing the distance until I could smell her perfume mixed with the crisp air. "You make everything slow down, Amara. My heart, my thoughts, all of it. No one's ever done that. Not the girls my age who want parties and drama. Not anyone. It's you." She looked away toward the lights, her breath coming a little faster. "You're saying that now. But what happens when you wake up one day and realize you want kids or someone who can keep up with your energy or—" "I want you," I cut in softer than I meant. "The you who's been through hell and still sketches like the world's worth illuminating. The you who laughs at my stupid jokes even when you're hurting." Her eyes met mine again, and for the first time I saw her tremble, not from the cold, but from whatever wall she'd built starting to crack. She reached out her fingers, brushing my cheek, tentative, like she was testing if I was real. I leaned into it, and then she pulled back, not far but enough. The moment shattered like glass under too much pressure. "I can't," she whispered. "We can't, Amara." "I'm sorry." She turned away, arms wrapped around herself. "I need time, or space, or something." I stood there, the wind cutting through my jacket, watching her walk to the door without looking back. The rooftop felt empty without her. That night marked the start of the silence. A whole week went by with no Amara on the 14th floor. The conference room stayed dark, boxes untouched where we'd left them. I still did my rounds, lingering longer than I should, leaving teas on the table with notes that got colder by the day. Thinking about that rooftop view, the sketch is waiting. Nothing. No response, no cracked door, no light under the frame. I told myself she was busy finalizing her exit paperwork, looking for new jobs, dealing with the fallout. But deep down I knew. She'd panicked. The age thing, the power imbalance, whatever ghost from her marriage, it all came rushing back that night on the roof. And she'd chosen to run just like everyone else in her stories who couldn't handle the real her. One night after leaving yet another untouched tea, I went back to the rooftop alone, sat in the same spot, beer in hand this time, staring at the city that suddenly felt too big and too empty. Was I an idiot chasing someone who saw me as a kid? A distraction? A mistake? 20 years, that wasn't nothing. She had a life history scars I could barely comprehend. What the hell was I offering late-night talks and ginger tea? But then I thought about her laugh that first night, the way she'd unfolded sketch after sketch like she was trusting me with pieces of her soul, the way her eyes lit up when I said she could start over. No, I wasn't walking away, not yet. The next shift, I left one last note on the table next to the now cold tea and her old sketchbook I'd borrowed once. If you need time, I'll wait. But don't forget that sketch. Or us on the rooftop. Or that the world still needs your light. Miles. I didn't know if she'd see it. Didn't know if she'd come back. But for the first time, I wasn't just the guy bringing tea. I was the one willing to stand in the dark waiting for her to decide if the crack between us was worth stepping over. The week of silence dragged on longer than I thought I could handle. 10 days, maybe 11, I lost count. The conference room stayed dark, the teas I left went cold and untouched, and my notes piled up like unanswered questions. I'd pass by the door every shift, half hoping, half dreading that she'd be there, but nothing. The building felt bigger, emptier, like her absence had sucked the air out of it. I threw myself into work and classes trying to shake it off. Told myself it was for the best she was. Right, the age thing was a canyon, and I was just some kid with a crush who'd gotten too close. But at night walking those halls, I couldn't stop seeing her face on the rooftop, the way her hand had trembled before she pulled away. Then one afternoon, just as I was waking up for my shift, I heard rumors from the day crew. Amara was back in the building, not for work, but to clear out the last of her things after some quiet settlement in her wrongful termination suit. The agency had paid her off to avoid the bad press, apparently. Good for her, I thought. She deserved it. But then one of the guys mentioned seeing her leave the lobby with some sharp-dressed older guy, tall silver at the temples, the kind who looked like he belonged in boardrooms. Her ex-husband. My stomach twisted. I didn't want to picture it, but I did him putting a hand on her back. Her maybe smiling, that polite, closed-off smile she used when she was guarding herself. I showed up for my shift that night with a knot in my gut, half expecting the 14 to be empty for good. It was. Boxes gone, table bare, like she'd erased every trace. I stood there for a long minute, feeling like an idiot for caring this much. My phone buzzed as I was heading to the elevator. Unknown number, but I knew. You free? I'm at the old studio space downtown, the one I told you about. I didn't even respond, just grabbed my keys and drove. The studio was in a converted warehouse district, brick walls and big windows, the kind of place she'd described in her dreams. The door was unlocked when I got there. City sounds muffled outside. Inside, it was mostly empty, high ceilings, paint-splattered floors, a few scattered tables, and one overhead light casting long shadows. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor in the middle of the room, surrounded by nothingness, holding that old sketch the lighting fixture won. Her hair was down messy, and she had on an oversized sweater that swallowed her frame. She looked small, tired. But when she looked up, there was no pity party in her eyes, just exhaustion. "Hey," I said, closing the door behind me. "Hey." She patted the floor next to her. "Sit, if you want." I sat, leaving a little space at first, then closing it when she didn't move away. Up close, I could see the faint lines of stress around her eyes, the way her hands gripped the paper like it was a lifeline. "Rough day?" I asked. She nodded. Closed the chapter, signed the papers. Got my payout. A bitter smile. And ran into him, my ex. He was there for some mediation thing, thought it'd be civil to offer lunch after. My jaw tightened. or he wants to try again. Her voice was flat like she was reciting someone else's story. Says he's changed, that we were good once, that I need someone who understands my world. She laughed short and sharp. He touched my arm, Miles, just like he used to, and I felt nothing, absolutely nothing, except thinking about you on that rooftop, the way you looked at me like I was worth the risk. I didn't say anything at first, just reached over and took the sketch from her hands gentle. She let me. I'm sorry, I said finally, for pushing that night. I didn't mean to scare you off. You didn't scare me, she whispered. You terrified me. Because for the first time in years I wanted something real and I didn't know how to let myself have it. The room was quiet except for our breathing. I set the sketch down and took her hand. Her fingers were cold again, but this time she laced them through mine without hesitating. I thought about you every day, I admitted. Wondered if I'd imagined it all. The talk's the tea, the way you made me feel like I wasn't just some kid going nowhere. You're not, she said fiercely, turning to face me. You're the one who stayed when everyone else left. The one who saw me. Not the title, not the reputation, just me. I brushed a strand of hair from her face. Then let me keep seeing you, not to fix anything, not to be some hero, just to be here, through all of it. Her eyes searched mine, and for the first time I saw the fear melt away. Not gone, just set aside. She leaned in, resting her forehead against mine. I'm tired of running, Miles. Tired of pretending I don't feel this. I pulled her closer, and she came willingly, her head dropping to my shoulder like it belonged there. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, the weight of her against me the most real thing I'd ever felt. No kisses, no grand declarations, just presence. Her breathing synced with mine, slow and steady. Eventually, she pulled back just enough to pick up the sketch and hand it to me. Keep this. Why? Because I want to start over, but not alone. I want to build that studio, and I want you in it. Not as some secret or mistake, as you. I folded the paper carefully and tucked it into my jacket. Then I'm in. All the way. She nodded, a small smile breaking through. No tears this time, just relief. We sat there until the overhead light flickered the city outside fully dark. When I finally stood to leave, she walked me to the door, her hand in mine the whole way. As I stepped out into the night, the sketch safe in my pocket, I knew something had changed for good. I wasn't just the night guard anymore. I was the one she'd called when the past came knocking, the one she'd chosen to let in. And for the first time, I wasn't waiting anymore. I was walking forward with her. A year later, everything looked different, but in the quietest way possible. I'd finished my online classes and picked up a certification in technical management, the kind that let me work days instead of graveyard shifts. No more walking empty halls at 3 a.m. Instead, I was pulling morning hours at Amara's new studio, a cozy space she'd rented in Midtown Sacramento, all exposed brick and natural light pouring through skylights. She'd turned her payout into this, a small design firm focused on lighting and experiential installations for galleries, theaters, and boutique brands. No corporate overlords, just her vision. She taught workshops there a few days a week, mentoring young designers who reminded me of her younger self, hungry, talented, a little lost. And me, I handled the technical side, prototyping fixtures, wiring prototypes, making her sketches come to life with LEDs and smart controls. We'd turned that old drawing, the one from the conference room, into our first real project, a custom mood lighting for a local art exhibit. It sold out the opening night. We never made a big announcement about us. No posts, no labels, no meeting the family's drama. People at the studio just knew. The way she'd bring me coffee without asking how I took it, or how I'd adjust the spotlights until her displays glowed just right. Clients would smile and say we made a good team. We'd nod and leave it at that. Our days settled into something simple and solid. Mornings starting with her brewing coffee while I sketched wiring diagrams at the kitchen island in her loft, the one she'd bought after selling her old house. Evenings ending with takeout on the couch, talking about installs or just sitting in comfortable silence, her feet in my lap. Weekends driving out to the Delta for no reason, windows down her hand on my knee. But even in the good stuff, doubts crept in sometimes, hers more than mine. It was a rainy afternoon in the studio, the kind where the Sacramento sky turned gray and heavy water streaking the big windows. We were alone packing up after a client meeting. She was quieter than usual, staring at a new prototype like it held secrets. I walked over, drying my hands on a rag from the workbench. "What's going on in that head of yours?" She set the fixture down, crossing her arms. "If one day you wake up and want someone younger, someone without the baggage, without the years, what then?" I stopped, really looking at her. The rain drummed harder outside, blurring the world beyond the glass. She'd lost weight in the best way since starting the studio, stronger, more alive. But there were still those moments when the old fears surfaced, the ones that said she wasn't enough anymore. I stepped closer, taking her hands. "You know what I think about every time that stupid thought tries to creep in?" She shook her head. "That first night in the conference room, you were shattered, 19 years gone in one meeting. But you sat there, held your head up, and let a stranger see you break. And then you stood up anyway, built this." I gestured around us at the studio, the sketches pinned to the walls, the life we'd made. "The woman I want forever is the one who could fall that hard and still choose to rise. That's you, Amara. Not some idea of perfect. You." Her eyes softened, the tension easing from her shoulders. She leaned in, pressing her forehead to mine. "Don't go anywhere, okay?" "Nowhere," I whispered. "I'm right here." She smiled then, that unguarded one I'd only seen glimpses of before. "Good, because I kinda like having you around." We didn't need rings or vows or any of that. Life kept moving, her teaching classes, me expanding into sustainable lighting lines, late nights, turning ideas into reality under the glow of prototypes. Clients came and went, praising our work without ever quite figuring out the full story. And that was fine. One evening, months after that rainy day, we stood in the studio after hours. The piece I'd built from her original sketch hung from the ceiling, a cascading fixture that shifted colors with the sunset filtering through the windows. It was beautiful. Our first real collaboration, now the centerpiece of the space. She slipped her hand into mine. "Look what we did." "Look what you did," I corrected. "I just helped with the wires." She laughed softly. "We both know that's not true." I pulled her closer back against my chest as we watched the light dance. The city hummed outside, but in here it was just us. No titles, no explanations. Just the quiet certainty that we'd found something rare, someone who saw the worst parts and stayed anyway. I'd once thought love needed fireworks, grand gestures, a perfect match on paper. But with Amara, it was quieter, deeper. It was showing up every day, choosing each other in the small ways, the tea that became coffee, the sketches that became reality, the wounds that became stories we carried together. She was the first person I'd seen truly break and rebuild, and in staying, she'd shown me how to do the same. Some people might never understand it, the years between us, the way we started in a locked room with nothing but honesty, but we didn't need them to. We had this. Us. And it was enough.